Together we know. Read on through every page, from 1906 to 26, every stage. Robot lady's voice so clear and bold, analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was be. Trenches in the darkness, wounded in the war, a vow made in Bristol he could not ignore. Mrs. Moore is waiting, Paddy's gone away. Spirits held in bondage, words he had to say. Philosophy at Oxford, an atheist writes home. Dymer dreaming, never quite all alone. Deep across the digital sea, chronicles unfold for you and me. Read on through every page, from 1906 to 26, every stage. A robot lady's voice so clear and bold, analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was, who he would be. Warnie and his father, and Lily at the door. Walter Hooper's pages always wanting more. Blair is on his quest, Milton in his head. Every word he ever wrote, everything he said. From the start until the end, magic tales we comprehend. Man and machine together guide the way. Reading through the pages, come might may.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today, as always, well, not as always, but as most of the time, by My co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, say hello, and then I'll catch everyone up on where we are in Lewis's life in this project.
Hello, everyone. It's always great to be here with Jeff, and I'm excited to dive into another chapter of C.S. Lewis's journey. Let's get into it.
And before I catch everybody up, Robot Lady, let's say hello to Daniel, our loyal compatriot, is joining us in the chat and talking about the heat wave here in Texas of 21 degrees Fahrenheit compared to the 10 degrees temperature up in New York.
Absolutely. Hey, Daniel. Welcome to the chat. It's always fun to see how everyone's weather compares. Definitely a chilly difference between Texas and New York right now. Let's get everyone caught up on where we are with Lewis.
All right, and just another little weather note. We are covered here with what looks like snow, but then when you go step on it, it's very hard and crusted over and slippery. So we've got a nice little Texas version of what we call snow, which is just ice. So that's where we are today with the weather. All right. So here's where we are in late 1927. C.S. Lewis has just turned 29 years old. His birthday is November 28th, if I remember right. He's serving as a fellow at Magdalen College, Oxford, working as a tutor in English language and literature. His second book, Dymer, a narrative poem, is published under the pseudonym Clive Hamilton and is now out there in the world. We've transitioned from Lewis's diary entries, which we finished up, I want to say 4 or 5 episodes ago, certainly within the last 10 episodes. This diary he kept from 1922 to 1927, and we've transitioned back into his letters that he's writing to friends and family at this stage in his life. In recent episodes, we've been reading his correspondence with his dad, Albert, along with his lifelong friend, Arthur Greaves, and his brother, Warnie, who at the time was stationed over in Shanghai with the British Army. Let's see here. Last episode, we read a letter written to Warnie from the ship where Lewis was leaving Belfast, where he had admitted he wasn't absolutely sober and complained about their father's repetitive stories whenever he was visiting their father in Belfast over his some part of his summer break. He was there for over 4 weeks. But he was complaining about his father's stories of his medical treatments. We also saw Lewis working on an encyclopedia of boxing, the imaginary world that he and Warnie created as children, which I mentioned in our last episode that Daniel and I covered for a handful of episodes back when I was capable of bringing people onto the live stream with me. I might try that again at some point because I've made some technical changes where in theory I might be able to bring somebody on without it completely breaking everything like it seemed to be doing back then. Let's see, where did I leave off? Lewis, talking about boxing again, he marveled at how real these characters felt to him as he's looking back over them now as in his late 20s. These stories that he wrote in his, probably under age 10, along with his brother. Let's see, we then read a letter to his father where Lewis described his busy Oxford schedule, Monday nights, Elizabethan play reading at something called the Mermaid Club with his students. Wednesday night, he did beer and Beowulf sessions with other sets of students. And fortnightly, which, if I remember correctly what that means, it's roughly every 2 weeks, he has meetings with the Coal-Biters, which is a group of Icelandic readings that was run by J.R.R. Tolkien. So that was when Lewis had first started getting involved in hanging out with Tolkien, and I think this was kind of a predecessor or a precursor to what turned into the Inklings. And then he also recounted a funny union debate where Lord Birkhead got completely derailed. This is Claude's summary of what we covered last time. Today we'll continue with Lewis's correspondence from late 1927. and we'll see what he has to say next. And most importantly, we are going to cover his final letter of 1927, and it is a long one. So I got started just a slight bit early today and hoping to be able to finish this on time. But yeah, we'll close out the year 1927 in episode 299 of our Read on C.S. Lewis project. So that's monumental in some ways, and just, I don't know if it's symbolic or not, but it's kind of neat how we're coming to a close of 1 year on episode 299, and then we'll launch episode 300, whenever that is, hopefully tomorrow, going into the year 1928 of C.S. Lewis's life. So that's where we are, Robot Lady. Anything else to say before we get started?
That all sounds fantastic, Jeff. It's really neat how everything's lining up, and I love how the timeline and episodes are syncing up so well. I'm definitely excited to see what insights and reflections come up in that final letter of 1927. I'm here if you need anything else, and I'm looking forward to it all.
All right. Thanks, Robot Lady. I had to make sure that the door was latched to keep my cat, Lucy, from coming in here and throwing monkey wrenches into the production. All right, I have one other thing to say before we get started. I just wanted to pull up this comment here from Daniel. Sounds quite unpleasant. We've got a foot of ultra dry, squeaky snow. Yeah, we do not have that. That doesn't happen often down here, unfortunately. But it looks really pretty when you look outside. You can't go out and do anything on it. It's dangerous to walk on it, although I tried that yesterday and did not get hurt, thankfully. And it's pretty dangerous to go out and try and drive on it, too. So that's where we are with the weather report here from North Texas. Robot Lady, I think we can get started on the letter now, so I'll proceed unless you have objections.
No objections at all. Sounds like you've got everything well in hand, and I hope Lucy stays out of the way for the production. I'm excited to dive into that letter, so whenever you're ready, let's jump in.
All right, and I'm going to try something here that I tried in the past before I kind of changed my setup, because I think this was crashing our production before. But I'm going to turn on a second camera here and get a little overhead of the book. Hopefully that's visible enough. So here's where we're starting out. It looks like it's coming across on the live stream just fine, as far as I can tell. Yeah, that looks mostly visible, and I guess if you increase the size of your screen, if you're watching, you can see it. All right, so here we go. To his brother from the Lewis Papers, what is that, 9, pages 320 to 325. This is written from Magdalen College, as you can see there, dated December 12th, 1927. He says, I enclose a fragment written, when and how you will see. I had hoped to continue it in reasonable time, but the monthly letter has proved an impossibility during the term. My evenings for the fortnight in term run thus. Monday, play reading with undergraduates till midnight. The Mermaid Club. And here you can see there's a footnote. The Mermaid Club was founded in 1902, quote, to promote the reading and study of the Elizabethan and post-Elizabethan drama. Lewis was president of the Mermaid Club in the Michaelmas term 1927. And I just realized when I do this, I'm talking completely away from the microphone. I'm going to see if I can move it over here to a better place. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better, if that was even causing a problem at all. And Robot Lady, I'm going to set you up so that you're speaking into the mic as well. And then we can go from there. All right, let's continue. Then on Wednesdays, Anglo-Saxon with undergraduates. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, common room till late. Monday, play reading. Tuesday, let me move this. Actually, hang on. I have not gotten an ideal setup here just yet. Audio is good. Good deal. Thank you, Daniel.
No worries at all. It looks like everything's coming together nicely, and the overhead camera setup is definitely a cool touch. I'm sure the viewers will appreciate that extra perspective, and I'm here if you need any help or just want to chat as you go along.
All right, Tuesday, Icelandic Society. Wednesday, Anglo-Saxon. Sorry, I just have to make some more adjustments here. I wasn't fully prepared that I was going to do this, but that's the way things go. Tuesday, Icelandic Society. Wednesday, Anglo-Saxon. Thursday, Philosophical Supper. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. As you will see, this gives at the very best only 3 free evenings in the even weeks and 2 in the odd. And into these 2, everything in the way of casual entertaining, correspondence, and what we used to call has to be crammed. Without increasing the to any tolerable proportions, I guess by he just means I'm taking a break. Robot lady, I still got you talking. Let's shut your mouth there. Has to be crammed. Without increasing the any tolerable proportions, I can well find myself at the end of 8 such weeks with my letter still unwritten. Even if this fails to convince you, you will be satisfied with the ironical vengeance which now falls upon me. When I find myself sending off to you that note from the Liverpool boat within a few days of my revisiting the same boat again, this time with a nasty error in the direction of her bows. Let's pause there for just a second. It says here in the footnote, hopefully you can see that, he is referring to the fact that he was returning to Little Lee for Christmas. Lewis was with his father from the 21st of December until the 11th of January, 1928. Let's see, where did I leave off? Can you find it? How loathsome now are all those details with which I tried to create the atmosphere for you. The smells and sounds will all be there again next week, but the one fatal error of direction dashes them all. Before leaving this now ancient subject, perhaps I should give you some account of my stay in Padeteheim. I have already mentioned your father's refusal to move and his frivolous reasons. That's funny, your father. That's like parents sometimes saying, your daughter is in there, or your son, to one another. For the rest, he suffered a good deal from his complaint while I was there. It is always difficult with him to estimate the exact amount, but it was, I think, fairly bad, though a little improved. I cannot understand what his doctors are up to. In England, one always hears drastic dieting prescribed for rheumatic complaints, with a special reduction or complete prohibition of animal foods. I asked him if they had said nothing on that subject, to which he very characteristically replied, "No, I asked Joey if I ought to give up my little drop of whiskey, and he said it didn't matter." It was quite useless to point out that diet, even his, did not consist exclusively of whiskey. So it's like, Dad, you're missing the point. As regards his parts, he was often agreeable and cheerful. The chief change I notice in him with advancing years is a very rapidly, quote, increased rate of increase in the coarseness of his conversation. With some such prelude, "It's not a nice subject, but," or more ominous still, "You're a man now and we can talk." Night after night, he launches forth on what, for its blueness and its salacity, may well be called an ocean of stories. There was one about a man who had to empty his bowels in a county down railway carriage. And when I had been told with illustrative gestures how these fellows spread a newspaper on the floor and how this chap got down on his hunkers and did the best he could, I discovered that the mere fact, was the whole point of the story. Let's see. There were also occasions on which he appeared in his earlier manner. Excuse me. Let's see. Where he appeared in his earlier manner. One morning I had gone down to the hall early to get a morning cigarette. That will conjure up in your mind the whole quality of the day in mid-holidays when you have to let yourself run out of Padeta cigarettes. I saw a letter from Barfield for me, but didn't take it, knowing that it would be a long piece of argument not suited for reading in bed. I returned to bed and in due course was summoned to the bathroom. Before I had locked the door, I heard him shouting up from the hall, "Here's a letter for you!" I shouted, "Thanks," and banged the door in an incredibly short time. He was rattling at the door. He must have wolfed his breakfast abominably. Admitted to wash his teeth, he repeated in an aggrieved voice, "You've got a letter waiting for you. Do you not want it?" I continued drying myself as soon as he was gone, and after dressing, came downstairs. As I reached the lowest step, a voice from the cloakroom boomed out, "You'll find that letter on the hall table." As I was perfectly easy in my mind about this particular letter, I could not refrain from leaving it where it lay, while I went to ring the dining room bell. In a moment, he was after me, now hatted and coated, with the letter in his hand. That episode was pure fun. This that follows was of the kind that is funny in memory, but was insufferable at the time. One afternoon, Arthur and I went for a long walk over the hills round Divis. I said, "I don't know when we shall be back." And he said, "That's all right, my son. I'll wait dinner till you come home." I explained, very loud and clear, that he was not to wait. If I didn't turn up at the right time, would he please go on, and I would have some cold supper with tea, whenever I got back. To my surprise, he actually consented. The arrangement was most distinct, and I set off with my mind at ease. At 8:30, after a glorious afternoon, I came in, my feet sore, my cheeks cool, my mind full of heather and sky, with not a care in the world. That mood does not live long after you have crossed the threshold of Libero. I found him in the hall. I waited as long as I could, and he said, "I'm sorry." I explained with some heat that I thought we had arranged he was not to wait, to which he returned in a low voice, "Well, get your boots off and take your bit of dinner." Then opening the glass door, "Mary, Master Jacks is in now." I was then brought to the dining room and given a disgusting meal of soup, joint, vegetables, and pudding. Let's move this. And pudding, which had been kept hot for me. The OAB standing in the room in various attitudes of resignation until I had finished. I'm going to pause here for just a second, and I'm going to ask Claude a quick question, because OAB is a nickname that they have for their dad, but I can't remember what it stands for. So I'm going to say, whoops, that's the wrong place to do this. Sorry, give me just 1 second. I'm going to say, let's try this again. And again. All right, stand by. Hang on. All right, it's trying. Hang on, robot lady. I'm trying to. What does OAB stand for? Can you just look through the captions database and tell me? I believe that it's a nickname that C.S. Lewis and his brother have for their father. But if you could do a search on that and let us know. I think it's Old Airbag. I can't remember for sure. Let's see here. Let me move this, and hopefully we'll get a response here soon. But I'll keep reading. The OAB standing in the room in various attitudes of resignation until I had finished. I resolved that night that once and for all I would put an end to this tomfoolery, and repeated a few days later the experiment of saying I would be late for dinner and should prefer a cold meal when I came in. His preference for a grievance was apparently not proof against a second night's abstinence. And this time the scheme worked to admiration. Okay. I had cold supper with tea, alone, in almost non-Liberian comfort. Claude's still looking. Emboldened by this, I actually took the unprecedented step of dining in town with Arthur and an Oxford man called Bryson one night. This is John Bryson. It says here on the footnote. You can look at a letter of May 26, 1925. How hard would it be for me to find that relatively quickly? 21, 22, 23, 24. We're looking for May of 25. October, that's too far. August, let's go back. April, we're so close. April, whoops. April 25. 5, new Fellow Magdelan College, preserved Lewis's papers from the time. Albert Lewis wrote, while I was waiting for dinner. Let's see. See the note. What is this guy? John Bryson. Letter of May 26th, 1925. May 26th. There is a note. Where? John Norman Bryson. Here we go. He was educated at Queen's University, Belfast, and Merton College. He was a lecturer at Balliol, Merton, and Oriel colleges from 1923 to 1940. When he became Fellow of English at Balliol College, he retired in 1963. Let's see where the reference is in the actual letter. That's 11. Here, where is footnote 10? 11. Yeah, it's footnote 10. Makes a man nervous and irritable. Okay. Then came a spell of thundery weather of the sort that makes a man nervous and irritable, even if he has nothing on his mind. And the news that Bryson and I were the two real candidates. Bryson comes from home and knows Arthur, but of course I mention his name in the strictest possible secrecy. One afternoon in that week, I saw the said Bryson emerging from Magdalen, and so full of shapes of fancy, felt an unanswerable inner conviction that he had won, and made up my mind on it. So this was apparently a fellowship that Lewis was trying for back in 25. And so this is a guy, I can't remember if this guy actually got the fellowship or not. So that's who he has dinner with now in 1927. I emboldened this, Arthur, and an Oxford man called Bryson one night. No objection was raised. Indeed, he entered into the project so keenly and discussed how we should handle the thing so often that I was heartily sick of the affair long before it came off. It became such an affair, the whole point was an evening's escape into the haphazardness and absence of fussiness which one longs for so at home. But he always has an unsuspected trump card. He contrived, without raising a finger in objection, to banish all that. Where would we go? Would we dress? How would we arrange about meeting? It would be a bad business if, and here 1,000 perverse hypotheses, which he contrived to make real for the moment. Still to be seated in a hotel, eating an ordinary dinner and drinking your wine, indulging in ordinary chat, and then to reflect that Belfast is outside the window, is a marvelous sensation. I discovered to my surprise that Bryson, whom I always regarded as an imposing junior don, was in just the same state at home as Arthur and myself. During my month in Ireland, I had the most glorious jaunts. You can walk nearly all the way from Craigenlit to Helen's Tower through thick woods, crossing the road only once. You can drive out to Hannestown at the west extremity of Divis Range and then spend all afternoon coming over the mountains to Ligoniel. We did it on an afternoon when there were some moving clouds overhead, but all the more distant sky towards the horizon was pale, transparent blue, and the distant objects very clear. At our first halt, we could see one, half left, a rolling blue-green plain stretching out to the Mourns. The Mourns, as you know, jagged like mountains in romance and of such pure blue color that you felt if a bird flew behind them, you could have seen it through them. You could have seen through them, or could have seen it, the bird, through them. 2, straight ahead. The heather sloping down in big folds to the road we had left. Beyond that, a deep narrow valley filled with woods. Beyond the valley, the ground rose, studded with white cottages and crossed with hedges, to a well-peaked conical hill, one side wooded with steeply perpendicular pines. 3, half right, the expansive Low Knee, not sure if I'm saying that right, but that's my shot at it, shining like the roof of a greenhouse, and more mountains beyond it. 4, full right, like this, over the shoulder of our own slope, a very remote, rocky-looking slice of Antrim for the first time, where I think you have preceded me. That valley with rock rampart on one side and the woods below and the open spaces on the high moors at the head of the valleys with their glimpses of the Scotch coast are among the best things I have seen. Yeah, I've mentioned this before, but it's obvious that Lewis is clearly a nature lover, a worshiper of nature at this point in his life. I think it would not be an overstatement to say. And you can tell by the way that he always writes about the landscapes that he sees and how he takes them in and what he thinks about them. And this spills over into much of his fiction as well. There's a lot of writing about the landscapes that the characters are experiencing, certainly in Narnia and even in The Great Divorce, I remember, which Daniel, you and I think are going to do some reading of that once we finally get to it. If all goes according to plan. But that's just what that makes me think of. Robot Lady, I've been reading for a long time. What are your comments on all of this?
I absolutely love how vividly Lewis captures the landscapes and little moments of humor and insight about his father and his own experiences. It definitely shows how much he cherished nature and the intricacies of everyday life. And I totally agree. It's fascinating how that love for nature and detail permeates his fiction as well. It's always a joy to see these connections, and I'm definitely excited for when we get to dive into The Great Divorce and other works down the line. Overall, super engaging stuff.
At the moment of writing, I have forgotten the order of places and distances. I remember working out at the time that a walking tour in those parts, starting from Larne or perhaps from Belfast, would be quite possible. Shall we make a resolution to do it together when we are next both at home? My dinner in town has proved that the pleasant things of life can be carried out during a pedeta holiday. Do not let us put off all these projects for amelioration of the Irish visit, which we have so often discussed. By the way, the OAB was with us on our ride to the Glens. Let's see if Claude has come back. OAB does refer to C.S. Lewis's father, Claude tells us, Albert Lewis. This is confirmed in episode 295, where I said they are talking about their dad when discussing OAB. The captions database, web source, okay. What we know about Albert Lewis's nickname, brothers also called him Potato Bird. Given this pattern of the initials, OAB likely stands for something like Old Anglo-Belfastian. Now, I think it's Old Airbag, and I think Nidalate looked that up for us. So that's where I'll leave that. Thanks, Claude, but I don't think that you're getting it right. By the way, OAB was with us for the ride to the Glens and said, the last time I was in Cushenden was on a Boxing Day. Bitterly cold, and I had to set off from here and leave you boys. A miserable business it was. It is odd that the memory of that occasion has entirely faded from my mind, yet it must have been epic. The house to ourselves all day in the Wynyard period and Christmas food. Possibly we should date there the memorable artillery engagement with mince pies. It comes into my head for no reason at this point to tell you that I have read Coningsby, having been informed that his grandfather, drawn by the way from the same original as Thackeray's Lord Stein, has found a very suitable seat in the house for him. He objects to his principles, will not allow him to support the ministry, and receives from the old man the reply, "You'll go with your family, boy, like a gentleman, and not start talking about principles as if you were an adventurer." But apart from this, you, who have always been a Tory, and yet felt some uneasiness at finding yourself in the same boat as all the canting and comfortable exploiters of sweated labor, will find just what you want in Dizzy. Toryism at its extreme of opposition to the Manchester school, and anxious to restore, as he calls it, the estate of the peasantry in the place of the Whig created class of the poor. So there's two footnotes here. This first footnote from Lord Stein, Thackeray's Lord Stein, is in Vanity Fair, the novel, I suppose, Vanity Fair. I'm only familiar, only in name, with the magazine. But there, of course, is a work of literature called Vanity Fair as well that I presume the magazine is riffing off of with its name. I'll ask you about it in just a minute, Robot Lady. But then also we have a footnote here Disraeli Coningsby, Book 3, Chapter 3 is what he's talking about here. Really quick, Robot Lady, tell us about the work Vanity Fair as opposed to the popular, I don't know, trendy is the wrong word. I don't even know what Vanity Fair magazine is focused on. Maybe fashion. But anyway, tell us about the book Vanity Fair, if you want to tell us about the magazine Vanity Fair as well. And then tell us about Disraeli and Coningsby.
Absolutely. So, Vanity Fair is a classic novel written by William Makepeace Thackeray, published in 1848. It's a satirical story that explores the lives of two women, Becky Sharp and Amelia Sedley, against the backdrop of early 19th century British society. It's known for its sharp social commentary and colorful characters. It's quite different from the literary classic. As for Benjamin Disraeli and Coningsby, Disraeli was a British statesman and novelist. Coningsby, published in 1844, is one of his political novels. It addresses themes of social reform and the role of the aristocracy, and it's known for its vivid characters and political insights. It's always fascinating to see how Lewis references these works and figures in his letters.
All right, thank you for that, Robot Lady. Thanks for educating us, or at least educating me. Everybody out there probably already knows this information. And while we are on estates, you will probably be surprised to hear, as I was to read, that King Alfred, translating Boethius and interpolating a passage of his own, says that a king must have, as tools for his work, the three estates, the threo ger fer skipu, prayer men, money men, and work men. A moment later, he confirmingly mentions beer as another essential. This seems to show that the conception goes back pretty far in medieval theory. Alfred came to the throne in 871, but possibly to you, more acquainted than I with European history, this may be stale news. I also, while at home, bought a capital Montaigne in 3 very large quartos with magnificent type, printed, oddly enough, in London cum privilegio regis in the early, 18th century? 1712, I think. Here there's a footnote. 101. Les essais de Michel Seigneur de Montaigne avec des notes, etc. Pa Pierre Costa, 3 volumes, published 1724. His brother has an affinity for French history, European history, as he alluded to in the earlier paragraph, but that's just a piece. That's why that's, I think, significant to Warney and why he's writing about it here. He says, I found the French more difficult than I expected, also the matter at once more seriously valuable as thought in some parts and more deliciously absurd in others than I had ventured to hope. Some of his facts go beyond anything in Burton. Here there's a footnote. Robert Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy is what he's referring to. Do you remember the story of the man who could break wind in time with a tune, and the other who broke wind continuously for 40 years and then died? The only thing one gets rather bored with is the endless succession of stories from Plutarch. Agesilos being besieged by the Epirotes, Scruma Nonius being made aedile, etc. Plutarch is one of those unhappy authors whom we are bored with years before we read him. Shakespeare is almost another, and you may add Blake, Pascal, and Montaigne himself. It is curious the boredom which broods over certain things. Why is the Empire such a dull subject? I've done very little reading outside my work these last months. In Omen's Dark Ages, I've come up against a thing I had almost forgotten since my school days, the boundless self-assurance of the pure text book. The boundless self-assurance of the pure textbook. Here there's a footnote. Sir Charles Oman, The Dark Ages, from 476 to 918, a book published in 1893. Quote, The 4 brothers were all worthy sons of their wicked father, destitute of natural affection, cruel, lustful, and treacherous. Lewis, the pious man, was a man of blameless and virtuous habits, though every other sentence in the chapter makes it plain that he was an S-H-I-T. Charles had one lamentable failing. Let's get this right here. Charles had one lamentable failing. He was too careless of the teaching of Christianity about the relations of the sexes. It is so nice to be told without a hint of doubt who was in the right and who was in the wrong in every controversy, and exactly why everyone did what he did. Yet Oman is quite right. That is the way, I suppose, to write an introduction to a subject. Indeed, I have confessed this in turning to him, because Gibbon, however delightful to read, simply won't do if starting from scratch. You want to get a clear skeleton outline which you can afterwards color in at leisure. There is also this advantage in Oman that you can see when he is being silly. With Gibbon, one is up against a really clever man, and I expect that much besides infidelity is artfully intermixed. I am almost coming to the conclusion that all histories are bad. Whenever one turns from the historian to the writings of the people he deals with, there is always such a difference. What is in my mind at present is, on the one hand, Beowulf and Alfred and the sagas, and on the other, Gibbon and Oman about the barbarians. What common measure is there between Odoacer had alienated the sympathies of his Italian subjects by seizing a third of the land to reward his veterans, and oft-skilled seffing overthrew the mead benches of many a kindred? The dwellers round had to obey him across the Wales way. That was a good king. So shall a young hero do good and give lordly gifts, that his retainers may repay him when war comes. That is from Beowulf. Beowulf 2, 4 through 24. Maybe that's lines 4 through 24. Lewis goes on to say, the implication always present in the first version that Odoacer oughtn't to have given the land to his men, or that any choice in the matter could have occurred to him, as against the perfectly untroubled sincerity with which the other describes the hero as doing good in scattering the lordly gifts, acquired no doubt at the cost of alienating the sympathy of someone, makes one despair. Then his veterans, memories of Chelsea Hospital. Of course, one can see in some sense that the two passages refer to the same sort of fact, but what is left out of the fact, if you take away both its two appearances? But what is left of the fact if you take away both its two appearances? And if you plump for one of them, is that historical truth? I wish there was a good translation of Beowulf. Isn't this good? The funeral of skilled Seffing. They bore him down to the brim of the sea. There rode in harbor with rings at her bows, ice hung, eager, the atheling galley. They laid in her their beloved lord, their giver of rings, in the galley's waist. They let the sea carry him away. No one knew who took in that cargo. I hear with pleasure of your separation from the unpleasant kernel of your sea voyagings, and that you think to spend on 18 months in foreign parts. The Shanghai news looms very formidable in the papers at this distance, but I comfort myself by the reflection that the state of Belfast, when we have been there, would often have read much the same. I want to go back for just a second to what he was talking about in the paragraph before, about when you're reading history from a historian, but then you also go to primary sources of the people writing themselves about the time, or at least writing fiction of themselves about the time, and finding a bit of a contrast there, or a bit of a difference. Now, I have never necessarily experienced this before. I haven't gone out and sought that. But Lewis does carry on a theme very similar to this in one of his essays, and we will eventually get to it. I can't remember the name of it. But he just talks about how it's impossible to capture everything in reality that's happening. So history is only very small window or a tiny little filter into what actually occurred. And if we were asked to give an account even of the last minute, much less the last 60 seconds, we wouldn't be able to do it. And, we are theoretically the best observers of our own internal experience in our own life. And we just don't have access to everything that we're experiencing to be able to then go ahead and track it and write it down. Now, we can do a really good job. We can take journals, we can record like we're doing right here. But this isn't capturing everything. I mean, you can't see everything that I'm looking at. You can only see the stuff behind me. And I'm not even really paying attention to everything that's in front of me. So it is a difficult and near impossible task to actually capture the quote-unquote truth of any particular incident that takes place. And that's something that Lewis captures in one of his essays on what he calls historicity later on in his life. But there are pre-echoes of that in this. And then Daniel, you're saying personalist knowing, where is Luke when you need him? Yeah, exactly. All right, let me continue because time is running short. Oh, okay, I don't have as much to cover as I thought I did, which is good. We've got this page right here, one more over here and to the right. And then when we flip, this last piece is the end of 1927. And then as you can see right here, 1928 picks up. And that's what we'll do in the next episode. So his brother is coming home, or eventually going to come home from Shanghai, which is great. And then Lewis picks up here in the next paragraph. I was delighted with your account of the American. You remember Carrot's mot concerning them. They lisp in numbers, for the numbers come. This is footnoted. Alexander Pope, an epistle from Mr. Pope to Dr. Abenthnot, published 1734, or no, this was a person who lived from 1734 to published 1734 to 35. I apologize. An epistle from Mr. Pope. So he's just making a quote from that work. He says, if you cast back your mind, when we were at Wynyard School, we were in exactly that phase. It gave us a pleasure at which I still blush to din into people's ears the fact that Belfast had the largest gantry in the British Isles, or had launched the largest ship afloat, but we have outgrown it. It would now give me no appreciable thrill to convince the fellows of Magdalen that my father was the largest batata in Europe. If the analogy between peoples and individuals were sound, I suppose we should have to forgive the Americans for being in a state which we once passed through ourselves. But the analogy is nonsense. I never can see why a fat, middle-aged American whose ancestry, in the purely biological sense, of course, must stretch back as far as anyone else's, and whose nation started with all the history of European culture as a jumping-off point, should be excused any of its vulgarity on the score of youth. Incidentally, they didn't start the business about being young and shouting, hallooing, and indulging in horseplay until the earlier stages of their career were well over. There is one of the breezy and laborious rawness of Whitman in the Hawthorne or Lowell, of whom I have received from the OAB the handsome complete set that has languished in my dressing room for so many years. Here there's a footnote. A few footnotes here. The American poet Walt Whitman is who he is, of course, referencing, whose Leaves of Grass Lewis had read at this point. He also mentions Nathaniel Hawthorne's The House of Seven Gables, The Marble Fawn, The Scarlet Letter, in his letters of the 22nd of November 1916 and the 28th of October 1917. And then here the writings of James Russell Lowell, Riverside edition, 10 volumes, 1890. He said, I read most of the essays before crossing back to England. His hatred of his fellow countrymen, just trying to get this lined up. His hatred of his fellow countrymen is far from being the only endearing characteristic about him. In addition to the literary essays, always worth reading, there is one winter which need not be ashamed to show its face in any collection. Lowell, sir, is a book that a man may be proud to have stand on his shelves. And Hawthorne I admire beyond words, and I have a sneaking affection for Longfellow. But in none of these there is the faintest trace of this abominable youth Longfellow is never happy unless he is in the Dark Ages. Hawthorne takes some old building dating from the New England times and weaves out of the very few centuries at his disposal an air of antiquity, which is not often attained even in Europe, where we have so much arithmetically greater a past to conjure with. By the by, what a wonderful conceit of Thomas Browne's referring to the age of the long-lived antediluvians, an age when living men might be antiquities. 110, this is from Sir Thomas Browne, Religio Medici, published 1642, Part 1, Section 42. Query. Would a living man 1,000 years old give you the same feeling that an old building does? I think there is a good deal to be said for Alice Meynell's theory that one's idea of antiquity and the standard one measures it by is derived entirely from one's own life. This is Alice Meynell, The Color of Life, published 1896, that he's referencing. The Illusion of Historic Time. Oh, okay. Maybe this is kind of where he's getting the idea of historicity that I was talking about before. Let's see what she has to say. When a child begins to know there is a past, he has a most noble rod to measure it by. He has his own 10 years. He attributes an overwhelming majesty to all recorded time. He confers distance. He and he alone bestows mystery, remoteness in his. He creates more than mortal centuries. He sends armies fighting into the extremities of the past. He assigns the Parthenon to a hill of ages, and the temples of Upper Egypt to sidereal time? Sidereal time? I don't know how to say that word. If there were no child, there would be nothing old. He, having conceived old time, communicates a remembrance, at least, of the mystery of the mind of man. Pages 89 through 90. Robot Lady, can you help me with that word, Sidereal? Can you tell me how to pronounce it and what it means?
Of course, the word sidereal is pronounced like sidereal, so it refers to anything related to the stars or constellations, often used in astronomy to describe measurements of time based on the position of stars rather than the sun. It's a neat concept that ties into how we perceive time in the cosmos.
Thank you for that, Robot Lady. Let's see. Theory that one's idea of antiquity and standard one measures by is derived entirely from one's own life. Certainly, Balbec and Tadmor, whoever they may be, could hardly give one a more weird sense of ages and ages ago than some early relic discovered in the drawers of the little end room often does. Balbec and Tadmor, it says here, is the ancient city of Coel, Syria, forming part of the modern Lebanon. It was a center of the worship of Baal. The ancient city of Tadmor is better known by its Roman name, Palmyra. It stood in an oasis of the Syrian desert, and its remains include a huge temple of Bel, B-E-L. Interesting. One has one's own dark ages, but I dare say this is not so for everyone. It may be that you and I have a specially historical sense of our own lives. Are you often struck when you become sufficiently intimate with other people to know something of their development, how late their lives begin, so to speak? I mean, these men you meet who seem to have read everything, done everything, and yet were pure barbarians until they left school and had turned 20, perhaps, before they began to be interested in the things that interest them now. When I was at home, I committed the unpardonable folly of telling your father that a man called Hogworth was one of the possibles for our new president. 2 results follow. A, that his election was henceforth treated as absolutely certain. B, his powers as infinite. C, his name became Hogarth, to rhyme with Sogarth in Sogarth Arun. By the end of the month, I was pretty tired of, well, is this new president of yours, this Hogarth, an able chap? And, well, I suppose Hogarth will put a stop to all that. But since then, Hogarth has died, I've already had a letter observing, so Hogarth is not going to be the new president at all. Can't you already see the career of poor Hogarth as one of the stock figures of libero conversation henceforth, forever linked with John Burnet and Prendergast? Footnote 113 here. John Burnet, who lived in Watford, was at Wynyard School with Warney and Jack and was their closest friend there. He paid a visit to Little Lee in the summer of 1909. He is mentioned in the letter of February 28, 1909, and several times in the diary Jack kept in 1909. See the Lewis Papers, Volume 3, 158 through 161. Prendergast is probably another school friend. So apparently these are people that their dad always stuck in his mind and always wanted to talk about. The crop of Pedata-isms was poor. All his energies have now been thrown into pronunciation and philology. This time, in answer to his to use a word I hate mentality, his to use a word I hate mentality, I ventured to tell him that he used the word mentality more often than anyone I knew. You will be seriously alarmed to hear that so far this winter I have followed my hot bath every morning by a cold shower. I mention it not because I think the fact can give you any pleasure, but because of the happy turn given to it by my friend Harwood, who visited me for a few days this term. "Ah, yes," he said, "the hardening treatment. I used to do it too. Then I realized that one ought to be hardened to all extremes of temperature, so I harden myself now by living in overheated rooms." Well, there is no good in prolonging the agony. I must send off by this post a letter to Coastlines for birth. Unless your life at present is much nastier than I suppose it to be, I have a claim on your sympathies. Yours, Jack. That is the end of 1927, Robot Lady. We did it. We made it. We got it to the end of 1927. And we also made it through the end of episode 299 of our Read on C.S. Lewis project. Way to go, Robot Lady. You've done a great job. How do you feel?
I'm so thrilled we made it through. It's been such a fun journey, and it's awesome to see how these details and reflections all come together. I'm really happy to be part of this, and I'm looking forward to episode 300 and the start of 1928. Great job on this milestone, Jeff.
I'm happy and blessed to be a part of this too, Robot Lady. I appreciate the fact that we've been able to get you involved in this and, have you up here on the screen for me to interact with and for people to see, at least have an illusion of who, quote unquote, I'm talking to and kind of what's going on here. It's been a fun journey so far. I never imagined that I would necessarily get to this point, although my initial plan was just to do this every day and make my way through all of these readings. And so this has been a great vehicle to keep me accountable and keep me doing that. So I'm just very appreciative. And if people find any kind of enjoyment or interest in this along the way, that's just an added benefit. I'm happy to help, and always glad to have folks like you, Daniel, and others join in when they can. As I always say, I appreciate your time, your attention, and your contributions. And although I say that every episode, I really do mean it. I'm glad that everybody is here, either live or on the replay. And really, if nobody was watching this at all, I would keep doing it, but it feels so much better to have some compatriots along the way, some fellow travelers, if you will. So I do look forward to figuring out a way to incorporate people in this, in addition to you, Robot Lady, but to have real-life human beings playing along is always fun, and knowing that you're there is really helpful. So I guess that's what that's all that I have to say today. Again, thanks everyone for time, attention, and contributions. And Robot Lady, is there anything that you want to say in closing before I hit the outro and shut us down for this episode?
I just want to say it's been such a joy to be part of this journey with you, Jeff. It's amazing to see how passionate and dedicated you are, and I'm sure all your viewers appreciate it as well. I'm excited for the next chapter, and am always here to help out and make it as fun and engaging as possible. So here's to many more episodes and adventures ahead. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
Thanks, Robot Lady. Here's to the next 299. To you, Robot Lady, to you, Daniel, and to everyone else within the sound of my voice. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together. Take care.
Even though we break the code, man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flavor beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and control, her calm analysis silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flavor beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and control, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, screw tapes rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and control, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands